Hi guys, I have headphones. Okay, but I take them out. We're back for part 3 of The War Against Women by Marilyn French. Part 3. The Cultural War Against Women. The real attitudes of a society often lie buried from view and can be extricated only by close analysis of behavior, language, and images. One cannot prove male hatred for women by citing statistics about female poverty everywhere in the world, because men can counter by impugning women's intelligence or competence, arguing that women deserve to be poor. That wars kill the children to whom most women devote their lives does not prove them inimical to women in particular. Men may shrug and say that sadly the world is a harsh place for men too, and women must accept it. But men who fight each other with fists often embrace afterward. Enemy nations too may develop deep ties after a war. The purpose of war is to prove certain men's superiority to others, to make a woman of or unman another society. Many early myths make this intention explicit, and to extirpate or transcend the feminine in the male. This attitude pervades the language spoken in the military and the defense industry. War against women as revealed in military language. Carol Cohn spent a summer studying with male experts in nuclear strategy. To understand them and speak so they could understand her, she had to learn their language, one made up largely of invented words, acronyms impenetrable to most of us. Cohn found it a sexy language, offering the delight in power that comes from knowing things ordinary people don't know, that shows one's intimacy with the most secret, highest reaches of state policy. Appalled by her pleasure in this language, she acknowledges it to suggest how seductive the power of such knowledge can be. She not only found its words fun to say, but was gratified at knowing the language of priests privy to God, designed to mystify and awe. Indeed, from its inception, nuclear science has used religious imagery. The inventors of the atomic bomb called its first test Trinity after the Holy Trinity, the united Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the male forces of creation. As it exploded in its first test, its main inventor, Robert Oppenheimer, thought of Krishna's words to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, "I am become death, the shatterer of worlds." And the men who today devise strategic doctrine call their community the nuclear priesthood. Nuclear scientists use another set of images of birth through the male, as in male initiation rituals. Scientists at Los Alamos called the atom bomb Oppenheimer's baby. Those at Lawrence Livermore called the hydrogen bomb Teller's baby. Those who wanted to disparage Edward Teller argued that he was not the bomb's father but its mother, and attributed fatherhood to Stanislaw Ulam, who had the all-important idea and inseminated Teller with it. Teller only carried it after that. A briefing officer excitedly describing the technical capabilities of a new satellite system added self-effacingly, "We'll do the motherhood role, telemetry, tracking, and control, the maintenance." As in religious hierarchies, birth through the male produces only males. The perversity of patriarchal thinking is such that these men felt the bombs that wreaked such human horror on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were their babies, little boy and fat man. Cohn remarks that the bombs were not only the atomic scientists' progeny, but emphatically male progeny. In early tests, before they were sure the bombs would work, the scientists expressed their anxiety by saying that they hoped the baby was a boy, not a girl, that is, not a dud. After the success of the first test, General Leslie Groves cabled Secretary of War Henry Stimson, "Doctor has just returned most enthusiastic and confident that his little boy is as husky as his big brother. The light in his eyes discernible from here to Highhold, and I could have heard his screams from here to my farm." Stimson then wrote Churchill, "Babies satisfactorily born." In 1952, after the hydrogen bomb named Mike tested successfully at Eniwetok Atoll in the Marshall Islands, Teller triumphantly telegraphed Los Alamos, "It's a boy." Cohn comments, "The entire history of the bomb project seems permeated with imagery that confounds man's overwhelming technological power to destroy nature with the power to create." The view of life as a struggle for power generates a language in which life has no significance and only power matters. So, nuclear scientists refer to the killing of human beings, not on their own side, as collateral damage. Military men who adopted this parlance used it in their television appearances to describe Iraqis killed in the 1990-91 Gulf War, whose actual number remains a state secret. 18th century physicians in Britain's Royal Society began to use euphemisms in writing up their experiments because simple language made clear the horrifying pain they were inflicting. This policy is now followed in every discipline that attacks, mutilates, and kills humans, even those supposedly intended to help them, like medicine. The term collateral damage also suggests that human beings were not the targets of attack, but simply in the way of the important business. So defense analysts call the incineration of cities counter-value attacks. Cohn's article was published in 1987, but we are all now familiar with some of the terminology she describes. We know that surgically clean strikes, shortened to surgical strikes, are counter-force attacks, attacks by weapons on weapons, or militarily useful installations that are supposed to take out, accurately destroy, an opponent's weapons or command centers without causing significant damage to anything else. War is waged between weapon systems, not human beings, as if enemies sat at opposite sides of the globe playing video games. An MX missile carries 10 warheads, each with the explosive power of 300 to 475 kilotons of TNT, a destructive power about 250 to 400 times that of the bomb that leveled Hiroshima. This is the weapon Ronald Reagan dubbed the Peacekeeper. While the defense analysis community mockingly scorned his euphemism, they themselves called the MX a damage limitation weapon. They also discuss clean bombs, nuclear devices that work largely by fusion rather than fission, and therefore release more energy not as radiation, but as blast, destructive explosive power. They are clean because they do not emit as much radiation, but they have a greater power to kill and destroy. Men have appropriated not just birth, but women's work, using nursery and domestic images to mask the horror of what they do. They approve clean bombs and speak longingly of padding bombs and missiles. They named an electronic system designed to prevent the unauthorized firing of nuclear warheads PAL, P-A-L, Permissive Action Links, a carefully constructed, friendly acronym. They called an early version of an anti-ballistic missile system BAMBI, an acronym for Ballistic Missile Boost Intercept. They called the president's annual nuclear weapons stockpile memorandum, listing short and long-range plans to produce new nuclear weapons, the shopping list. They choose from a menu of options when selecting targeting plans. Scientists call one model of nuclear attack the cookie cutter, and the pattern MIRV'd missiles nuclear warheads make when they land, a footprint. Men do not drop nuclear bombs. They are delivered by a bus. They do not use the terms nuclear bombs or warheads, but call them re-entry vehicles or RVs, as if they were recreational vehicles, trailers. Cohn's summer seminar included 9 other women. She expected such highly educated, knowledgeable men, faced with 10 women in their midst, to feel discomfort about their more macho expressions. But, she writes, she was wrong. They seemed innocent of feminist critique of male behavior, and openly said that for the American military, nuclear weapons were irresistible because you get more bang for the buck. They told her that scientists would never seriously contemplate disarmament because disarmament is emasculation. To disarm is to get rid of all your stuff. One professor explained that the MX missile would not replace older, less accurate missiles, but be placed in the silos of the newest Minuteman missiles because they're in the nicest hole. You're not going to take the nicest missile you have and put it in a crummy hole. Scientists lectured on vertical erector launchers, thrust-to-weight ratios, soft laydowns, deep penetration, and the comparative advantages of protracted versus spasm attacks. Defined by one military advisor to the National Security Council as releasing 70 to 80% of our megatonnage in one orgasmic whump. They expressed serious concern about the need to harden our missiles and the need to face it. The Russians are a little harder than we are. Cohn found Air Force magazine's advertisements for new weapons a rival to Playboy in cataloging men's sexual anxieties and fantasies. Ads promote weapons as big sticks or penetrators or for their cratering powers. When French military men do nuclear tests on the Mururoa Atoll in the South Pacific, they give every crater they gouge out of the earth a woman's name. Phallic imagery is common in descriptions of nuclear blasts. Cohn cites one by journalist William Lawrence, who witnessed the bombing of Nagasaki. Then, just when it appeared as though the thing had settled down into a state of permanence, there came, shooting out of the top, a giant mushroom that increased the size of the pillar to a total of 45,000 feet. The mushroom top was even more alive than the pillar, seething and boiling in a white fury of creamy foam, sizzling upward and then descending earthward. 1,000 geysers rolled into one. A Pentagon target analyst explained that plans for limited nuclear war were doomed because it's a pissing contest. You got to expect them to use everything they've got. When India exploded a nuclear bomb, a professor remarked that she had lost her virginity. When New Zealand parliamentarian Marilyn forced her government to bar nuclear-armed or nuclear-powered warships from its ports, a retired U.S. Air Force General Ross Milton wrote an angry column in Air Force magazine called Nuclear Virginity. Cohn found the world of nuclear weaponry pervaded by friendship and even romance. Enemies exchange warheads. One missile takes out another. Weapon systems can marry up. The wires linking warning and response mechanisms allow coupling. But this sex and romance aim at murder. If one of one's own warheads kills another of one's own warheads, that is fratricide. And while these men devoted considerable discussion to vulnerability and survivability, they were concerned not with vulnerability and survival of people, but of weapons systems. Cohn quotes two descriptions of the aftermath of a nuclear attack. One by Hisako Matsubara, who was a child in Kyoto when an atomic bomb was dropped, is based on survivors' memories. Everything was black, had vanished into the black dust, was destroyed. Only the flames that were beginning to lick their way up had any color. From the dust that was like a fog, figures began to loom up, black, hairless, faceless. They screamed with voices that were no longer human. Their screams drowned out the groans rising everywhere from the rubble, groans that seemed to rise from the very earth itself. The second is in Nuke Speak, by an army general on the National Security Council during the Carter administration. You have to have ways to maintain communication in a nuclear environment. A situation bound to include EMP blackout, brute force damage to systems, a heavy jamming environment, and so on. The most appalling and profound truth about all this is that these men are not even concerned with their own survival. Only power matters. It is God, an exalted, disembodied force more important than humankind. It is difficult to plumb such absurd and perverse thinking. Cohn stresses that men's reference point in techno-strategic discourse is not themselves or even white men, is not human beings at all, it is the weapons. These men call human death collateral damage, less to conceal human suffering than because human death is collateral to what matters to them, weapons themselves. Be right back.